Ken Massik, thank you so much for being with us. For viewers who might not know exactly who you are, how would you describe yourself? What's your job, do you see?
I'm an Israeli writer, I'm a speaker. I'm speaking on campuses and communities around the world. I also do social media for a living, but my passion, what I'm really doing that keeps me going, is advocating for Israel, for my country.
You yourself served 5 years, I think it was, with the Israeli Defence Force. Obviously, everyone does their national service. What was it that made you think, you know what, I want to keep going?
I felt like my military service really was meaningful. I was able to work with Palestinians in the West Bank. I served in Hebron, Jerusalem, and Ramallah, and I really saw that I made a difference there. My position was to be the humanitarian officer in those regions. But
did you, whilst working, particularly in the West Bank, I mean, do you understand why there was just this immediate, very obvious antipathy coming from the Palestinians?
Definitely. I mean, we can't ignore the fact that there's a military control over the West Bank of another country. It's not Palestinian security, at least in Area C. 52% of the West Bank is still under control by Israeli military. So I totally understand. I would hate it just as much.
How does it feel to point a gun at your fellow man?
It's not nice. It's not a good feeling. I was 18, 19, 20, and the fact that you hold a gun is something that is so unnatural. And when I joined the army, I was really a peacenik. I thought that that's why I ended up in the humanitarian unit. I thought that I'm going to go there and just do peace, and then they gave me this gun, and it was it's not the most comfortable feeling. It's scary, But when you're in a situation like this, when your life is being threatened, when you're 2 hours away from your home and you know that my baby cousins are there, and if I want to hold my weapon and protect the border, it will be them. And I think that's a big difference between the Israeli army to any other armies, to armies that are sending their weapons, thousands of miles and kilometers over sea to fight for oil or for democracy or for ideas. At the end of the day, the Israeli army, what we're doing is defending our home, defending our borders. We're not going to Afghanistan or to Iraq or to anywhere like this.
I mean, you mentioned earlier your identity, and part of that obviously is that you're a gay man. Mm-hmm. I don't know whether I should have been as surprised as I was, but it did kind of slightly strike me as in Congress that you actually came out whilst in the IDF, and to your commander, you came out the closet. Just tell me about that.
It's a funny story. I mean, I was in the closet. I never spoke to anyone about it. I was 18, and my family I thought back then, would never accept it. They're Iraqi, Tunisian, very traditional. And my commander back then, he was an awesome guy. He was 32 and I was 18. And I told him that my best friend just came out of the closet. My best friend was also in the army. And I remember my commander sitting there and saying, well, there's something else that bothers you, right? And I'm saying, what? And he says, well, I think you're gay too, right? So there I am, not being helped out of the closet, being pulled out of the closet by my commander. But it was such a relief to hear someone saying it. And then I remember saying yes, and he said, well, there's another thing. I think you have a crush on your best friend, which he was also right about.
Perceptive, commander.
Right.
I mean, you mentioned it as well, but another key aspect, or I imagine to be key aspect of your identity, is that of being Mizrahi Jew, and the fact that you moved to Israel from Iraq. Again, tell us about this, because it's fascinating, this the Arabic and the Jewish coming together in one.
Right. Well, my family came to Israel. My mom came from Iraq in 1951, and my dad came from Tunisia. It's a big misconception, I think, that I'm seeing around the world, that people think that Israel is this white or European country, when 60% of Israeli Jews are Jews from the Middle East and North Africa. So they came to Israel, they came with an identity and culture that was Arabic culture, into this country that is newly born and being attacked by Arab countries. And they have this conflict of identity between being, appreciating Arabic culture and enjoying still cooking Arab food and still listening to Arabic music in this country that speaks Hebrew, that is being attacked by Arab countries around us. And I think that was a big part of them developing into the Israeli society and creating this new Israeli identity.
I mean, did you experience any of that tension as you were growing up?
Definitely, and it's funny. A lot of times when I'm speaking about it, I'm worried that it will be used to say Israel is a racist country. I don't think Israel is racist, but I think that there is racism in Israel, just like in every society. But I felt it a lot growing up. I remember when my teacher in high school was asking us about our favorite music, and I mentioned Kulthum is my favorite singer, Egyptian singer, and my teacher started laughing, and they said, "Oh, those Mizrahis, they have no culture." She was a European Jew.
Just describe to us then your experience of growing up in a part of the world where there is, let's be honest about it, an ever-present risk of violence.
It's you don't really wake up in the morning and think that your life is in danger. It's just something that is in the back of your mind, that you walk around with it, knowing that there might be something happening. There might be a terror attack. I experienced several terror attacks in my life where I was close or almost inside a in situation of.
I mean, you've just glossed over that. Well, I've been involved in some terrorist attacks. I mean, tell us just a little bit about that, because the overwhelming majority of people in this country haven't even been close to a gun most of the time.
Yeah. It's interesting that I just jumped over it, but it's true. I mean, I think Israelis are like that. When I was 12, it was the closest that I got into terror attack. I was about to get into an ice cream shop when the ice cream shop blew up, and I was thrown back. And a terrorist walked inside, blew himself up, killing a grandmother and her 2-year-old granddaughter. It was shocking for me. It was the first time, I think, that I was that close to, and the only time that I was that close to not sitting here today with you.
What did you think of the Palestinians that day?
I was really angry. And the things that ran through my head were really racist. And I remember going back home, and my mom was crying, and she hugged me and she said, "You're alive, you're alive." She kept on screaming, "You're alive, you're alive, you're alive." And I think that this really changed my perception, that I was really angry. And my mom, instead of telling me, "Yes, you should be angry," or what, she almost lost her son. And she's just focusing on the fact that I'm alive. And I think since then, really, my perception really changed. And that's what led me at the end to join the Humanitarian unit, to want to do something to achieve peace. I'm not willing to accept the reality of bloodshed, and I want better for my kids and for Palestinian kids.
I just want to take you back to UCL, and you will remember this, I'm sure, but just in case, let's take a look at the clip.
Close the other door.
We're in the 21st century. They do not need no Jewish majority state.
I saw you watching that and a shake of your head.
Yeah, I got goosebumps.
Tell us what it was like.
It was terrifying. It was terrifying. I mean, I'm coming to a campus, and I wasn't scared for my life. I was scared for the students that were with me, the Jewish student. There was 10 or 12 Jewish students with me in this room. And then people started jumping into the room and banging on the doors. I thought they're going to bring down the doors. And I was there, and I'm, a citizen of Israel in the UK, in Europe, locked in a room with people banging on the doors, saying, calling shame, 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 trying to get to us, to me and a group of Jewish students. It's disturbing. It's more than disturbing. It's awful, I think.
I mean, I don't want to minimize your experiences of that day,
Right.
but I kind of want to take us back to where we were earlier in the interview, where I said, do you not understand why people are so angry?
Not that angry. I mean, I would understand if you told me, here in England we protest against everyone, against Russian, against Chinese, against Iranian, any one of the 57 Arab Muslim countries, against Qatar, against Saudi Arabia, against speakers from all over the world, against Americans. Because let's face it, I mean, every country has its problems. But it's not like that. And just because I'm Israeli, I mean, it's not because of any part of my identity. Okay, sure, maybe because I served in the army, but most Israelis serve in the army. It's compulsory service. So to say that it's because I served in the army, so you're basically saying any Israeli is a target, any Israeli is a fair target, and they don't deserve to speak on campuses, they don't deserve to voice their opinion, while people like Mahmoud Ahmadinejad was invited to speak at Columbia without any protest.
As you mentioned your sexuality again, you mentioned the kind of the acceptance of trans rights. I mean, do you find it slightly strange, given that the left, here in the UK and elsewhere, were in essence the driving force behind gay rights, that they are now so critical of the only part of the Middle East in which there are gay rights?
Yeah, I think instead of supporting them, instead of supporting us, the LGBTQ community in Israel, we are being attacked, and I'm being attacked a lot of times by my own community, by LGBTQ people around the world, and it's really, I mean, it's awful. And there's this term, pinkwashing, that Israel gave gay rights to protect itself from criticism.
You've been accused of pinkwashing yourself.
Yeah, many times, and I think it's ridiculous for LGBTQ people to accuse me in pinkwashing and saying because I'm queer, I'm going to, to cancel anything you're saying because you can't represent Israel with all its crimes and promote it as a gay person. But I mean, they're accusing me in what they're doing. They're using their queer identity to fight for political cause. If you're fighting for LGBTQ rights, let's speak about LGBTQ rights. Let's speak about forced transgender operations in Iran, where it's the country with the highest transgender operation. Not willingly, people are told that if you're gay, you're either going to die or you're going to go through an operation. Or in Egypt, the highest amount of operation of women to men, because women can't be lesbian. Or in Gaza, in the Gaza Strip, where gay men are being thrown out of rooftops. We need to speak about those issues, and no one is speaking about it.
Do you think those actions are justified by the Quran?
I don't like to get into it. I don't think that the Quran, I mean, if you look at the Bible, there's also things in the Bible that are not really...
Quite a few, yeah. Don't get me started on shellfish. You know?
Exactly. So I don't think that it's based on everyone have their interpretation. I think that Islam is evolving, and we're seeing voices of change by many Muslims around the world. But it's not about Islam. It's about those countries that are oppressive and homophobic.
Anti-Semitism has obviously been something we've talked about in the UK a lot of late, the Labour Party and its travails, the era definition of anti-Semitism. But before we get into that, is it possible to be critical of the state of Israel without being accused of anti-Semitism? Yeah,
I've been criticizing Israel since we started, and I hope people don't think that I'm an anti-Semite. Definitely there is, and there's actually the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance define what criticism of Israel, a legitimate criticism is. As long as you criticize Israel just like you criticize any other country, as long as you criticize Israel without opposing its existence, which I can't even believe that we need to discuss the idea of if a country has right to exist. Why is that even an issue? I never heard anyone saying, does the UK has the right to exist?
I mean, is anti-Semitism still a problem?
Yeah, it's definitely a problem. I don't think that anyone that criticizes I don't think that the majority of people that criticize Israel are anti-Semite. I don't even think that many of the people that support boycotting Israel are anti-Semite. They might be they're part of a group or of a movement that I think in large is anti-Semitic. The leadership is anti-Semitic, but I don't think many of the people that boycott Israel they don't even understand that, and that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to educate people and to help them understand what is anti-Semitic. Anti-Semitism hasn't passed from the world. It's still alive. It's, as you said, it's alive with with Jeremy Corbyn in the Labour Party, where 85% of our UK Jews think that he is anti-Semitic. I heard that the Labour wanted to redefine anti-Semitism for the British Jews. That would not happen with the LGBTQ community. There would be an outrage if anyone would say, gay people don't understand what homophobia is. Let us tell you what homophobia is. Or racism, or telling the black community, you know what, maybe you're a bit paranoid, maybe you don't really know what's racism against you. Again, I would never sit with a black person and tell them, you don't really understand what it is, what racism is against you, or there are some things that you are a bit overreacting about. I don't think that anyone should do that. And if a community, in large, not only in the UK, all over the world. I mean, the vast majority of Jews around the world are Zionist. Is saying that we believe that this levels of criticism is anti-Semitic. I think the world should listen, and it's important because we've seen where not listening led us in the past.
Well, where do you think the greatest rise in anti-Semitism is coming from on the political spectrum? You know, the left or the right?
Definitely the right, the far right. We're seeing it in Europe. We're seeing it in the U.S., where in Pittsburgh, an alt-right person walks into a synagogue and shot Jews that were praying. So definitely the strongest and the most violent type of anti-Semitism comes from the alt-right, the radical right. I think a very dangerous type of anti-Semitism, as we said before, comes from the left, because the left, the radical left, is supposed to be about human rights, and this type of anti-Semitism is under a facade of human rights, of equality, of fighting for a political cause, or in the Middle East. And that's what makes it even more dangerous, because I can tell you who's a Nazi, I can tell you who's a KKK, and I see them online, you know, they call me the worst names. But when someone says, well, you know, any Zionist that kills Palestinians should, or that is against Palestinians, should not be humanized, like a feminist leader said in the past, recently, then it's more dangerous. That's what I think.
Are you a Mossad agent? Several people have suggested it online.
Maybe. I can't tell you.
Well, you have to kill me if you tell me.
Yeah, I never killed anyone, but not yet in my job with the Mossad. But no, I'm not a Mossad agent, and you have it. You have it first.
We had it here first. Right. Ken Massik, thanks very much for joining.
Thank you for having me.